1 point will do it. 1 point will seal a return to the Championship for Paul Warne and Derby County. The first automatic promotion in God knows how long, and the first promotion since that playoff campaign versus West Brom at Wembley. The 1-0 win from Stephen Pearson, an absolute wonderful day that was. I was only 4, maybe 5 years old, tied to my seat with a scarf, and it was an unreal experience to be a part of, and I get the chance to be a part of it all again this weekend if Derby County do seal a point at minimum versus Carlisle United, and that's the game that we're going to be taking a look into right now. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about heading into this weekend. Obviously, Bolton Wanderers are now the only team who can challenge us for that automatic promotion place, but they face Peterborough, who will not be wanting to head into the playoffs off the back of 2 defeats. So it's going to be very interesting to see the sides that are fielded at the weekend for those two sides. But ultimately, all that matters is that Derby go full strength and go all out for 3 points against Carlisle, and ultimately that means that it doesn't matter what happens in the other game. But shall we now take a look at the league table? We're going to talk about Bolton, we're going to talk about the playoff race, and we're ultimately going to talk about Derby versus Carlisle. So here we have it then, in Derby County, obviously in pole position for this final automatic promotion place. And I've had a lot of comments recently telling me that Bolton are done and dusted. They're out of it. They're not going to get into that final automatic promotion place. But for me, I will not be waving any flags. I will not be celebrating. I will not be buying a Derby County 24 promotion shirt for the day. But ultimately, we have the best possible opportunity. If we can't get a point against bottom of the league, already relegated Carlisle United, then ultimately we do not deserve to be promoted, in my opinion. It's one of those situations where if we end up in that situation where we end up finishing 3rd, I'll be absolutely devastated. Ultimately, it's going to be very interesting on the final day anyway. Obviously, you've got that playoff race, which I spoke about in a video just a couple of days ago. You've got 4 teams in that. You've got us and Bolton battling for the playoff place. And then you've got those 3 teams at the bottom in the relegation zone who are all fighting for survival. But ultimately, the important game for this video is Derby versus Carlisle. And we go into it with the best defensive record in the league. We go into it with the 4th best attack in the league, joint with Pompey. The only teams ahead, actually it might be, is it 5th? 5th best team. I think there's Peterborough, Bolton, Barnsley and Oxford ahead of us. So yeah, 5th best, joint with Pompey. We have the best defensive record in the league, and ultimately that 4 goals on goal difference which Derby County have over Bolton is going to prove to be very important, I believe. Now, we are going to scroll down and look at Carlisle, obviously winning 1 of their last 5. Obviously, they've beat Bolton, they've beat Peterborough recently. They've picked up some fairly good wins along the way this season. They have some former Derby County faces in their ranks as well. So, shall we get into taking a full look at that game? So, it's a 12:30 kickoff. It's live on Sky TV, and Derby County face Carlisle at Pride Park Stadium. Now, ultimately, Derby have never lost to Carlisle, and ultimately, I'm not reading anything into that at all, because apart from the game back in League One, it's all been cup games, one back in 2014 and one in 2016. Now, Derby came away 2-0 winners in the previous fixture versus Carlisle. It was just one of them games where we wasn't really playing well. We just came away with the 3 points, and ultimately that's what Derby County have done a lot this season, and ultimately it's what Portsmouth have done to secure the title. And I spoke about this a few times in my previews, my reviews of the game. It's got to the point where we got to the last 10 games, and ultimately I went, it's not about performances now. Get the points on the board, win your games, and we beat Bolton in what was a good performance, but nothing to shout home about. We beat Blackpool in another one, beat Cambridge in another one like that, and ultimately I think Saturday is no different. We have to come out and make sure we don't concede. Now, Joe Wildsmith is joint top with Lucas Jensen, the Lincoln City goalkeeper, for clean sheets, so he's going to want to keep a clean sheet to try and get his hands on the Golden Glove. Obviously, I think Nathaniel Mendez-Lang is well ahead when it comes to assists in the league this season. Obviously, he's broken Derby County's assist record this season, which is mega impressive. I think that's stood for a long time, and he's broke that record. And ultimately, we go into this final day with James Collins. Obviously, he will have wanted to get 20 goals in all competitions, but ultimately, I do think he's going to fall short. I think he's on 18 in all competitions, so unless he bags a brace at the weekend, that won't be happening. But if we scroll down, we can see Carlisle United, obviously, we know they're at the bottom of the league, and the form reflects that. Obviously, Derby's form reflects their position in the table as well. But ultimately, if they'd have won at Wickham, if they'd have picked up a point at Northampton, they'd already be up. And that is the problem that I have with this team, is there's too many games that we've dropped this season, and that's the problem for me. And ultimately, the Pompey game, going ahead twice now, come away from that, it was a brilliant point. But then you also go back to the Pompey game at home, should have won that. Now, at the end of this season, when it's all said and done, the playoffs are done and everything, I am going to be doing a full season review for each team. What I'm going to do in between playoffs and the playoff final and stuff like that is we'll get some teams that their season's over to go through as well. So I hope you stay tuned to the channel for that. But obviously, ultimately, there is two teams battling this automatic promotion place, and that is Bolton and Derby. And I do think we've got to get it done ultimately. If we drop 3 points at versus Carlisle, I'll be very, very disappointed. I was watching a podcast with Jake Barker, Rams Talk podcast, with Goalhanger and Derby Retweets, Jamie Page, and them lot. And Jamie was very, very confident that the deal's already done. So confident that he's going on holiday, and ultimately, I can't be so confident. And it's just one of those where I'm just not quite comfortable going into this game thinking it's all said and done, because I don't think it is. I think a lot is going to happen on that final day. Ultimately, Carlisle could score within the first 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden, like, Bolton are sort of, Derby are losing. Let's go and get some goals. And it's one of those where Peterborough now don't have anything to play for to sort of stop Bolton beating them. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's handled out. But shall we take a look into the Carlisle manager, former Derby County coach Paul Simpson? I'm jumping in to ask a quick question, and chuck your answers down in the comments. If you could choose one Derby County player to secure promotion to the Championship for us, who would it be? For me, I'd pick one of maybe 2 or 3 players. Number 1, Louis Sibley, academy lad, Derby through and through. Broke through, had an outrageous breakthrough campaign, and ultimately sort of fell to the side a little bit during our struggles. He was still about the club, but not really getting minutes in his preferred position. And then this season, he's really came to life, especially in the last few weeks at left wing back. And I'd love for him to show that passion and energy and get himself a goal at the weekend to secure promotion back to the Championship. I think it would be a massive moment in his career as well as in Derby County's lives, and it'll be something that will be remembered forever. The second player who I'd want to do it is Martin Waghorn. I think we go back just a few years to Sheffield Wednesday. Martin Waghorn essentially knocking himself out in the first 5 or 10 minutes, trying to win a header from a corner. Goes on to score the goal that kept us up ultimately in that game. And ultimately, if he sends us back up to the Championship, I think it's one of those where you just go, it's got to be scripted, because that would be a moment of absolute magic. And the final player or players for me would be anything involving any of the other academy players or Craig Forsyth. Now, I don't think Craig Forsyth is going to be fit for the weekend, but ultimately I've not heard from Paul Warne as of recording this for the pre-match with BBC Radio Derby or Rams TV. So it's going to be interesting. I think anything academy-wise would be absolutely massive for the club, because you've got a Liam Thompson popping up to get Derby promoted, or an Erin Cashian popping up to get Derby promoted, Louis Sibley. I think that would be a massive moment for the club. Even Max Bird popping up, and even Fozzie, I think it would end up being a brilliant way to end his time at Derby County and potentially end his footballing career. So here we have the Carlisle United manager, and he has ultimately done a wonderful job with this Carlisle United side. He took charge in February 2022, and ultimately his numbers with this team have gone down the Swanee this season, ultimately, because they punched above their weight to get up to League One, and ultimately they have slumped right back down to League Two. But they definitely will build on it, and Paul Simpson was a coach at Derby County, and who worked, I believe, under Steve McLaren at the time, and fairly decent bloke. And ultimately, is he going to do Derby a favour? That's the big question. Is he going to go into this game fielding a weakened side? Probably not. Are Carlisle going to get caught up in the moment of Pride Park? Because obviously that's probably going to be the biggest stadium they'll have played in ultimately this season. So obviously averaging 1.2 points per game with a 33% win rate is very good for Paul Simpson over his 120 matches, 40 wins, 26 draws and 54 losses. But ultimately, they've only won 7 games this season, but some of them big games. They beat Peterborough, they beat Bolton. They've had some really good results this season. And ultimately, I think a big problem that ended up happening with Carlisle was they lost their skipper and former Derby County Academy graduate Callum Guy early on in the season, and ultimately I think that led to a few problems, especially within their midfield. So I mentioned Callum Guy just a moment ago. The 27-year-old midfielder came through the academy at Derby and unfortunately only started 16 games this season. He's been around the block a bit. Obviously came through at Derby County. You can look through his career on the right-hand side. He spent time at Port Vale, Bradford, Blackpool, and then ended up at Carlisle United. He got injured back in November, and up until then he was averaging a 7.27 average rating in League One with 1,400 minutes played. He's played 160 games for Carlisle United, and if you look at the results before then, obviously only playing 20 minutes in that 3-1 game versus Leyton Orient. You've obviously then got Kate. Look at these ratings that he put up. Ultimately just came unstuck, and the injury really sort of ruined his season, really, and I think it had a big impact on Carlisle United too. But ultimately, losing your captain at any point of the season is not very well taken. Like Derby County, they've been through a few captains this season, not necessarily through injury, although they did lose Conor Horahan, Craig Forsyth, they lost Sonny Bradley, Nathaniel Mendez-Lang spent a couple of games out, Bird's been out injured. So ultimately, losing your captain isn't great, but especially when you're a newly promoted team and you're trying to keep that stability from your promotion season. But shall we take a look into some of Callum Guy's teammates and who Derby County needs to look out for in this weekend, essentially? So obviously, there's some names on there like Owen Moxon, who Derby County won't need to worry about. He moved in January to Portsmouth and has secured promotion to the Championship as well as the title. But a name which Derby need to look out for is Jordan Gibson. He's collected 10 goal contributions this season for a relegation threatened side. That is very good. He's also beat his XG by 1.3 goals. John Mellish, another player with 5 goals this season. Daniel Butterworth with 5 goal contributions too. Obviously, Sam Lavelle also in there. But ultimately, it doesn't matter who Carlisle have. Derby County have to get their job done. So let's take a look into my team prediction heading into this weekend. Is there going to be any surprise changes? Obviously, with Conor Horahan fit and Max Bird fit, is Dwight Gale going to be available? Who knows what's going to happen this weekend, but let's take a look at the team prediction. So ultimately, I'm sticking with the same 3-4-3, 3-5-2 that we've been playing for the last couple of weeks. Ultimately, I don't think Max Bird should start, although I do think Max Bird is an absolutely phenomenal player. I just think we need to stick with what we're going to have and what we've been playing, because ultimately I think Thompson has been brilliant in that position recently. Obviously, you've had Barkhazen in there before. You've had Joe Ward involved instead of Sonny Bradley to go to a 4-4-2, sort of a box type thing. So ultimately, for me, we don't make any changes. Sibley's been performing excellently. Kane Wilson as well. Obviously, he came off at the weekend. Is he going to be fit, or was it just a case of making sure he is fit for the weekend? Obviously, James Collins back fit recently, and he's been in and about it, but I believe he's only had something like 3 shots on target since coming back into the side. Nathaniel Mendez-Lang getting back on the scoreboard at Cambridge. Now, we've spoke about this team selection, so let me know yours down in the comments. Ultimately, I don't think we should make any changes. If there is any changes, it'll probably be bringing in Max Bird, which ultimately I'm not sure I 100% agree with. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know your score predictions as well. And yeah, let's close out this video. So I predicted my results back at the start of the month, and ultimately I thought we'd have it done and dusted by now. I thought we'd have it done and dusted with a draw at Cambridge, but ultimately we came away with all 3 points, and ultimately we have to win this game at the weekend. And it's going to be a massive, massive game for Derby County. It's going to be a massive game for a lot of those players on the pitch, but ultimately we're in the position we're in because we deserve to be there. Since that game at Stevenage, I think we're 6 points clear of Portsmouth when it comes to results after that game. And ultimately, I think that shows the quality we have in this squad. And ultimately, we didn't start strong enough. And Paul Warne rectified it after Stevenage, but ultimately, it was too little too late for the title. But is it going to be too little too late for automatic promotion? Let's get that result. Let's get those flags waving. And let's have a promotion party at Pride Park on Saturday. It's going to be absolutely immense. The atmosphere is going to be crazy. There will be a match day vlog coming out on Saturday, hopefully with the promotion scenes, but who knows what's going to happen. Is it going to be devastation for Derby, or is it going to be a delightful Derby Saturday? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Hit the subscribe button while you're down there, and I'll catch you in the next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.